Thank you. I love seeing some Cotopaxi gear. It makes me happy to see it. So who here is everyone, who's from Utah? Who's not from Utah? Oh, quite a few. Okay. Freshmen? Sophomores? Juniors? Seniors?
Super seniors?
Super seniors? That's great. Okay, so a great mix. And who here is interested in entrepreneurship? Okay. Has there been anyone here that started their own business, even if it's failed? Okay, that's great. Well, I'm excited to be here. I drove down from Salt Lake and spent the whole day to come down and spend a few minutes with you guys. So, what time does this class end? I just want to make sure. I know we're starting a little late with evaluations and some technical.
Usually go till 12:20, but
okay.
I think we could go.
I'll end at 12:20, and then maybe we'll do some Q&A at the end. And then for those that want to stay, you can stay for the Q&A. How does that sound? Sound good? Okay. I hope you all know a little bit about Cotopaxi, but I'll go into a little bit about the story, about Cotopaxi's story, my story, and I'm gonna go back to my own beginnings because I think it's relevant to why I started Cotopaxi. When I was 4 years old, my family left the United States, and we ended up moving to the developing world. And this is where I ended up spending all of my childhood and early teenage years and a lot of my adult life. And one of my earliest memories as a 4-year-old was seeing other kids my age, 3 or 4 years old, that were standing on the sides of the street completely naked. And at that young age, I started understanding how lucky I was. I didn't come from a wealthy family, but I had more than these people had, than these other kids that were my age. And I didn't do anything to deserve that. I wasn't smarter, I wasn't harder working, I wasn't more deserving. I was just lucky into where I'd been born. And so from that young age, I knew that I had a responsibility to find a way to give back and to help others. And so from the time I was a kid, I knew that that was something that I had to do in my life. When I was in college, I had a mentor that ended up kind of putting me on the path of entrepreneurship. And he was an entrepreneur who had become a philanthropist, and I wanted to convince him to let me go work for him, but instead he convinced me that I should become an entrepreneur. And then down the road, 10 or 20 years later, he said I'd be able to find my own way of making an impact. And so I was determined to do that. But before I go into the entrepreneurial part of the story, I want to share an experience that I had that really put me on a path of looking for a way to help. When I was at BYU, I decided to look for an opportunity to do an internship in Latin America. And I found a really cool internship working for a nonprofit in Peru. And I was super excited about it. I had never been to Peru, but I lived in Bolivia and in Ecuador, some of the surrounding countries. And so I was thrilled about it. It was unpaid, but it was just this amazing experience. And so I went to a little city called Cusco. It's up in the Andes Mountains. It's near Machu Picchu, which is this lost city of the Incas. And as I got into this little city of Cusco, the first thing I did is I went and bought some food, and I went and sat on a park bench in the middle of the main plaza. The plaza is called the Plaza de Armas, and I went and sat down on this bench, and I wanted to eat outside because I wanted to soak in the magic of the city. And so I sat down on this bench and started eating, and immediately all these little kids ran up to me, and they tried to sell me things, postcards and finger puppets and candy and all sorts of other things. And as I was on this bench, I immediately connected with these little kids. I started joking around with them a little bit, and after a while they all ran off, but there was one little boy that sat next to me on his shoe shining kit, and he kept insisting that he wanted to shine my shoes. And it took me a few minutes to convince him it actually is not possible to shine tennis shoes. And so, he finally stopped asking about shining the shoes, but he kept sitting there. And after a while, I realized, maybe he's sitting there still because he's hungry. And so I ended up offering him the rest of my food. And I had never seen somebody eat like this before. And it was just shocking to me, and it really touched me. So that night, as I was eating dinner, I decided, I'm going to save some of my food. I'm going to go find Edgar, this little boy. He was 9 years old, but he was much smaller than what you'd expect from a 9-year-old. And he was always easy to spot because he had a hole in the butt of his pants with no underwear on. And so you could always spot him from a distance. And so I went to the main plaza and found him straight away, and I gave him this food. And he was so surprised that I would come find him again. But he took the food and he ran back and started sharing it with all of his friends. And they all started eating this food with their hands together. And it just moved me. And I decided, this is something that needs to become a daily ritual for me. And so every single day, I would look for Edgar. And it was the highlight of my day every single day. My last night in Cusco, as I was walking home, late at night, it was close to midnight, I was walking down the street and I saw 2 little kids cuddled on the side of the street together, trying to stay warm, their sweaters pulled over their knees. And as I got closer, I recognized one of the little boys was Edgar. And I didn't know a whole lot about his family, but I knew he had parents. And so I went and I woke him and I asked him, why was he sleeping on the street? Why wasn't he home? And he told me that someone had actually stolen his shoe shiny kit, and he was too afraid to go home. His dad was an alcoholic, and his mother depended on him to help feed his siblings. And he knew he couldn't go home without that shoe shiny kit. And so I ended up giving him the little cash that I had, and that night I could hardly sleep. I was just so worried about little Edgar. And the next day I got on a bus to leave Cusco for the last time, and I went into the main plaza and stopped to let some people on and off, and as I was looking out the window, I saw Edgar, and he saw me, and we had just enough time where he ran next to the bus, waving goodbye. And this is Edgar. As he ran next to this bus, waving goodbye to me, he had a big bag of candy that he bought that he was now selling in the streets. And it was on that bus that I made a commitment to myself that I was going to find a way to use my life to help others, to help people like Edgar. And so as I graduated and I decided to jump into a career as an entrepreneur, my entire purpose and every single day was thinking about Edgar, and it was thinking about how I could make a difference in the world. And I dabbled in a few different ideas. A couple of my ideas even had a social mission kind of built into the business, and none of the ideas worked. I had a few quick failures, but I ended up landing on an idea that ended up working. And over about 6.5 years, I built this business, and it ended up being a market leader in the United States in its industry, and I ended up selling the business. And I decided to go back to graduate school. I'd always wanted to do an MBA, so I ended up going to the Wharton School to do an MBA. And my cousin, who I built a business with, went to Harvard Business School, and the two of us together decided that we were going to spend the next couple of years in school figuring out what we wanted to do next. And so that first year in business school, we came up with about 65 ideas. And then we went out, in the summer, we went out to Silicon Valley, and we spent the entire summer there. Instead of doing internships, we decided to spend that summer together figuring out what businesses we could start, or what business we could start. So we took those 65 ideas, and within a few weeks we cut them down to 4. And then we took those 4 ideas, I took a couple of them, he took a couple of them, and we started diving deep, doing a lot of vetting and testing to see which one of these ideas was the idea that we wanted to go spend the next several years on. Ultimately, we decided to go down and move to Brazil and start a business there called baby.com.br. So everything in Brazil is .com.br. We started fundraising while we were still in school. We went out to Silicon Valley and I met with investors and told them about this vision of what we wanted to build down in Brazil. And while we were still in school, we ended up raising $4.3 million in venture capital for this business. It was crazy. I mean, we were even shocked ourselves at the traction that this idea had. And we moved down to Brazil, and within 18 months of our launch, we went from 4 employees to 300 employees. And so it was just this amazing experience of building this business. And, you know, in a lot of ways, it was this dream come true. I was back in Latin America where I'd grown up. My 2 daughters were speaking Portuguese. I was building this really fun business. I was actually, I met with a bunch of students that were from Wharton that were doing a program in Brazil. We met in Rio de Janeiro on this rooftop hotel that kind of overlooked the entire, all of Rio de Janeiro. You could see Copacabana Beach and Ipanema, and you could see the Sugarloaf Mountain and the Christ Redeemer statue up on the top. It was just like this perfect setting. The sun was setting. And, I'm talking to all these students and I'm telling them, you know, you guys shouldn't go to Wall Street. You shouldn't go be a consultant. You guys should start businesses. Go build something. Go create something that can change the world, that can make the world better. And one of the students at the end asked me a question that really I'll never forget, and it really stuck with me, which was, do you really believe that you are changing the world by building this business, selling baby products in Brazil? And you know, I answered, yeah, I felt I was making a difference. You know, all these new moms in Brazil in the emerging middle class, like, they didn't have access to their own car, and so they're taking public transportation to go shopping for their kids. And oftentimes in these big cities, there's crazy traffic, so it would take, you know, 2 or 3 hours just to go to a Walmart to go shop and then come back. It was just not a great experience for a new mom. So I thought, you know, we're making the lives of millions of mothers in Brazil a lot easier, so they can spend that time with their kids. At the same time, as I'm saying this, I was thinking, I'm a fraud. Like, I had committed to make a difference in the world, to help kids like Edgar, and that's like, I'm just not doing that. And I left that meeting with those students determined that I was going to do something different. And I wanted to go build something more meaningful. So I ended up deciding to leave Brazil and resign from my role as CEO to go start something different. Something where the entire thing was built around giving back and helping other people. And so I moved back to the States, and I decided, I wasn't really sure what that was going to be, what the business would be, but I knew if I built a business that had these core values, I could make a difference in the world, and that I could not only do good with the business, but I could inspire other people to go out and do good with me. And so I ultimately decided on the outdoor industry. I love the outdoors. My dad was an adventurer, so I grew up, we'd go make our own raft and float down the Amazon River, fishing for piranhas, or we'd go survive on uninhabited islands, spearing fish with spears we'd made ourselves. I love the outdoors. And so I thought, you know, there's a place in the outdoor industry to go build a new brand, a brand that's built around this idea of giving back and doing good. But I knew it was also a very crowded space. There are a lot of outdoor brands. And so how do we build something that's different and something that's meaningful? How do we build something that stands apart from other brands? And so I'm going to show a couple of quick videos here that explain a little bit about how we decided to do that. Has anyone here done the Questival? Great. A few of you. And then who has heard of the Questival? More? Okay. So we just had a Questival in Salt Lake this last weekend. The Questival is basically a 24-hour adventure race where we get people to go out and form teams. They go spend 24 hours completing all these challenges with their friends and having just this amazing 24-hour experience. And so when we decided to launch the Cotopaxi brand, the day that we turned on our website to sell the first products that we started with 5 backpacks. We had the first Questival. And no one, of course, knew who Cotopaxi was because we hadn't sold anything yet. But the way we got people to know about the Questival was we actually showed up on college campuses with llamas. We went on the KSL Classifieds, we bought 2 llamas, one that we named Koto, the other one we named Poxy, and then we went on these college campuses. I remember I showed up on BYU's campus, and we were right in the heart of the campus in what's called Brigham Square. And as I sat there, we got these llamas in there, I thought, I just wonder how many minutes it takes before they come and arrest the llamas, you know? We had not asked for permission, and so we get up on campus, and I'm not kidding, within 10 minutes, there are like hundreds of people gathered around these llamas, taking selfies, saying, why are there llamas on campus? We give them a little flyer, told them about the Questival. People started like sharing it on Snapchat, on Instagram. Everyone was talking about it. The student newspaper came and did a story on why the llamas were on campus and told the story about the Questival. And about 4 hours in, campus security rolled up in a golf cart. And I was like, here we go. You know, arrest me, you know, I'm guilty. They walked right up to me and they say, sir, could we take some selfies with your llamas? I was like, what? I was like, yeah, absolutely. And then they like drove away. I was like, this is amazing. You can like break any law. had this amazing experience with this first festival. Here's a quick video that kind of shares some video clips from the first festival and then subsequent festivals that we've done. Last year we did about 50 of them all across the United States. Oh, I need to get volume. Let's see. Maybe this is... Okay, plug your ears. We had 30,000 social media posts that were shared during that first festival. And I knew we had something special when I actually showed up to the line, one of the check-in spots, and people were getting their backpacks, because everyone that does the race gets one of our backpacks. I saw people in the line wearing Cotopaxi shirts and hats. Now, we didn't even make shirts or hats yet. We had only made 5 backpacks, so people had made their own homemade Cotopaxi gear. There was like a Jeep that had our llama logo spray painted on the back of it, and on the side doors, and on the hood. I was like, I wouldn't even do that to my own car. Who's doing that? But that's when we knew we had something really cool. Let me show you also a little bit about how we think about making product. Again, we're always trying to inject our mission of doing good into everything we do. So the Questival, there's all these do good challenges. And then the product.
There's one collection that really encompasses Cotopaxi and its Gear for Good philosophy. It's the Del Dia collection. It all started with us not wanting to create more waste. It developed into also empowering the employees at the factory to be more creative themselves. From the ground up, each Del Dia product is one of a kind and handcrafted by different individuals throughout the production process. It starts with somebody going into the warehouse and handpicking the fabrics. Then it goes to the pattern makers and the screen printers, and then to the sewers who select the materials they want to use. And it's all of these creative steps that come together to create a one-of-a-kind Del Dia product.
Asan yung bag mo maganda? So, anong kulay ang pinaka-gusto mo? Gusto ko yung red, kasi sign ng love yun. Yung mga Pilipino kasi mapagmahal masyado yan eh.
Gusto kong mga dark color eh. Parang masaya tingnan ba? Nakakaalis ng stress, nakakaalis ng pagod. Pag nakita ko talaga yung bag, pag yung mga dark color na gano'n, napapatawa ka na. Talaga napaka-smile ka na.
I've been on the production floor and I've seen this process come together. It's something our factory in the Philippines is really proud of. Our goal with the Del Dia collection is to connect you with the creators of these products, to get you outside, to help you do good, and to inspire others to do the same.
So I love this product because basically every one of these bags on this Del Dia line of bags is unique. Every single one of them is designed by a sewer. These sewers are given a voice for the first time. These sewers on average have been there 11 and a half years, but have never been able to make a choice about what they're sewing. They're just sewing what they're told to sew. But they're the craftsmen, they're the artisans behind the product. And so this has been so meaningful for them and meaningful for us. So the bags are super funky, every single bag is crazy, the straps don't match, the buckles as they go together oftentimes are different colors. But you can't wear one without people stopping and saying, where did you get that? That is the craziest thing. So that's a really fun product. Here's another great product story. This one's really special for me because I actually lived in Bolivia and lived in one of these communities that makes about $200 a year. So they live in extreme poverty, and I'd always been determined to go back and find a way to help. And so we developed this really cool supply chain around their community.
Es de bastante importancia la llama. Con eso compramos mercaderías, alimentación y educación para los hijos. O sea, aquí vivimos desde los abuelos que han vivido hace más de 500 años, debe ser, los abuelos que han vivido. Y siempre no nos vamos a olvidar nuestro campo, donde los abuelos, papás han vivido. Siempre van a estar generación en generación. Yo sé que a un tiempo mis hijos también estarán aquí.
You know, growing up in South America, I saw llama wool and llama fiber being used constantly, and it was the fiber they used for thousands of years. So it's been interesting to see how underdeveloped this industry is, despite having been around for so long. And we're just barely kind of tapping the surface about how we can have the greatest impact on the livelihoods and lives of these individuals living in the Andes.
Well, I love the Fuse jacket because it is a story that keeps on giving. And so it has this traditional exterior, but technical fabrics, amazing colors, and instead of just putting polyester or down insulation in it, I wanted to dig a little deeper to see what other natural fibers are out there. I knew it worked, technically, but now to see how it can work with building and preserving communities completely changed me as a designer and how I want to design future products.
I think one of the most powerful parts of the Dakota Pepsi brand is this connection of product to people. And one thing that we're hoping to accomplish is to allow people, as they're wearing one of our products, to actually feel a connection with an individual that lives in Bolivia. So we make these amazing jackets. We also make some crazy llama sweaters and llama socks and some other amazing products that are all made of llama wool from these communities. So it's really special to see that impact that we've been able to have there. One of my favorite aspects of the brand is, and the social impact that we've had is working with refugees. I moved to Utah 4 years ago, and within the first month of being here, one of my friends invited me to an event with refugees, and I actually didn't know that much about refugees, I'm embarrassed to say. The places I'd lived before in Latin America just didn't really have refugees in the same way, and so it was a new experience for me, and I was blown away by their stories. And it touched me in a way where I knew I had to do something, and so we created a number of programs at Dakota Pax where we help refugees. We have, if you actually order something on our website, when you get your package, you'll actually get a handwritten thank you card that's written by a refugee that's been resettled here in Utah. It's their first job. They're learning how to speak English, so they actually write the thank you card in their native language. Then we teach them basic job skills, how to create a resume, how to do a job interview, how to open up a bank account, and have been able to really have an impact in the lives of a little over 100 refugees that have gone through this program. About a year and a half ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Middle East, and I worked with refugees in different parts of the world, but this one was a really special experience. Many of you are probably following the story in Syria, what's been happening there. But Jordan, which borders Syria, this is a refugee camp right on the border. It's called Zaatari. It has 84,000 people. It's the 4th largest city in Jordan. A few years ago, this was just desert. Nobody lived here. But these refugees have all fled Syria. They've started a new life here in this refugee camp. There are 1,400 small businesses that have been built here. Women that are sewing dresses or cooking different meals. Men that are making furniture out of scrap pieces of wood. It's just a beautiful story of the unconquerable human spirit. At the same time, it's just heartbreaking to see these people that have been completely displaced. One of my favorite moments was actually at the end of the day, as I was kind of on this little hill that overlooked a lot of the camp. All these little kids were following me around and just wondering why this super white, bald guy was walking around. And they came up to me and one of them just instinctively grabbed my hands and flipped off his shoes and started walking up my legs and did this little flip. And I don't know if any of you guys did this with your own parents at some point, but I do this with my little girls, and it was just this this beautiful moment, and all of a sudden all these kids lined up and they all wanted to do this flip. And so all of them come up and they flip off their shoes, which was so respectful. And they walk up, but pretty soon I had like these dusty footprints all the way up my body. And it was so beautiful because just for a few minutes, these kids forgot that they were in a refugee camp. And the average person is in a refugee camp for 17 years. And so these children have likely been sentenced their entire childhood to live in this camp. That night as I got home, I turned on the TV in my hotel room in Amman. And as I was getting ready, I was just having the news going. And I saw an image that many of you probably saw here in the United States as well.
Today, the United Nations is asking for 48 hours of relief in the fighting to break from the violence between the government regime and rebel forces. In 5 years of war, more than 250,000 people have lost their lives. That includes 4,500 children in Aleppo alone. Millions more displaced without a home. Now that includes Omran. And what strikes me is we shed tears, but there are no tears here. He only cried once. The little boy is in total shock. He's stunned inside his home one moment, and the next, lost in the flurry and the fury of war and chaos. At least 3 people were killed by this bomb in this neighborhood. This is Omran. He's alive. We wanted you to know.
So as I saw this image, it just completely broke me inside. Little Omran is not too different from my own children. I was just with children just like him just a few hours earlier in this refugee camp. And for me, it hit home the urgency of the work that we have to do. Everyone in this room is lucky. And you have a responsibility to find a way to do something that's bigger than yourself, a way to give back. Many of you maybe wonder, whatever happened to that little boy, Edgar, that little boy that inspired me so many years ago? I wondered the same thing. That was in 2001. And I don't think I've gone a day since then that I haven't thought of Edgar, of that little boy and what he went through and the lessons I learned from him. So a couple of years ago, I actually decided, after I'd started Cotopaxi, that I needed to go back to Peru. I'd never been back. I wanted to try to find Edgar. And I knew that it was really an impossible task. I didn't know his last name. I didn't know anything about him other than he was a shoe-shiny kid. He was 9 years old in 2001. And I ended up flying into Cusco, and I just put my bags in this hotel. I went down into the main plaza, and I was lucky I had a little 11-second video clip of him running next to this bus, and I had one picture of him sitting on a shoe-shining kid. And so I took these pictures, and I went into the main plaza, and I started asking if people knew who he was. And through a series of small miracles, I was able to find Edgar. And we ended up spending an entire day together, embracing, and he wanted to show me his home. And we went up into the hills of Cusco in this little bus, and then walked up the side of this mountain. And as we're doing this, he's telling me his life story. His dad had actually died of alcohol abuse after his mom had died giving birth to his younger brother. And so he's now raising his younger brother and his younger sister. He built this home himself, which he was so proud of. And when we got to the home, it was a dirt house made of mud, dirt floors with a hole in the ground for a toilet. And there was a piece of me that was just so discouraged to see how he was living. But then there was this other piece of me that was so proud of him because he was so proud of himself. And luckily I'm in touch with Edgar all the time. He's one of the most active Facebook users on the planet. And so we're in touch all the time. And he's actually, I'm helping him go through a program that he's graduating from this year. It's a 3-year program where he's learning to be a tour guide. He's actually learned English phenomenally well because he still works in the streets of Cusco selling. He sells paintings now. And so he's worked with tourists his entire life. He knows Cusco better than anyone. And the deal is he has to do well in school, so he's always sending me pictures of his report cards. And he does pretty well most of the time. And so I'm really proud of him, and I'm just so grateful to have Edgar in my life. He's done more for me than I could ever do for him. And my question for each of you is, who is your Edgar? Who is the person that every day will remind you that you need to look beyond yourself? And I hope that as you're in these exploratory years of college, that you can start looking beyond yourself. That you can start looking for ways that you can use whatever talents you have, whatever skills that you're developing to help others. And it's not easy. It takes time to figure out how to do that. For me, it took 10 years as an entrepreneur before I figured out how to do that. But it was something I had in my heart, and that I was looking and yearning to do every single day. And so I hope that each of you will do that. Thank you so much for having me. We'll wrap things up, and then we'll do a few minutes of Q&A for those that are able to stay. Thank you.
So this is our SUU study. And by the way, if you need to slip out, go ahead. Why don't we do 10 minutes of Q&A? Sure. So if you need to slip out, this is the time. Otherwise, stick around for a few minutes. This is the Thunderbolt Award, and I'd like to suggest maybe that it not go in front of CEO of the Year, but maybe next to it. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Out during the Q&A, that's fine as well if you want to stick around for a few minutes. And what questions might you have? Does anyone have any questions? Yeah.
So did Cotopaxi start with Questable, or were you guys selling stuff before?
No, it started the day that we started selling product on our website was the first day we had the Questable. So the two started together. It was like part of the vision for the brand from the very beginning. I knew that we needed to build a brand that built experiences into the brand. Especially if we're targeting a millennial consumer. You guys know as well as anyone, millennials value experiences more than things. And I feel the same way. And so I wanted to create memories, I wanted to create experiences that people could go live
In the market, how did you feel that you were going to best compete against these other established brands? Because like you said, there's so many, Marymount, all these other companies in this industry. How did you figure that you'd get a way into market share?
Yeah, so the question is like, how did we, there were so many other competitors, how did we think that we could go compete? The reason why is because I didn't see anyone else in the outdoor industry building a brand around people. Everyone else was building a brand around the environment. I love the environment. I want to protect the environment. But I think at this point, that's table stakes. Everyone needs to do that. When Patagonia started 40 years ago, they were the only ones thinking that way. They were so innovative. And they took a lot of guts. And I respect Yvon Chouinard. I've met him. He actually owns one of our Del Dia bags. He's a great, an incredible entrepreneur. But all these brands are building around the environment. I felt like they were missing something. They were missing this human element. And that's what I felt we could do differently. They were also built, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago. Patagonia is almost 50 years old. The North Face is 60 years old. Columbia is 70, 75 years old. So those are your parents' brands, right? Those aren't your brands. And we just felt we could build a brand that resonated and was built around the values of this millennial consumer. And so that's how we felt we could compete and build something a little different. Yeah, great question. Yeah, love the tech and the Do Good shirt and the hat.
Yeah.
So I noticed in the video that you have, what I've seen, like you manufacture your products in other countries. How did you come to decide what countries you want to get your materials from?
Yeah, so the question's around how did we choose which countries to manufacture in and to source product from. A number of, so we manufacture some product in the U.S., in Wisconsin and Oregon. Most of it is done overseas. And we do it based on, number one, the factories that are capable of building the very best product in the world. So our pack factory manufacturers for Arc'teryx, for Black Diamond and Gregory, Patagonia. They're the best pack factory on the planet. They also are aligned with our values. They treat their employees fairly, they're paid living wages. The fact that the employees don't live at the factory, they live in their community, which is important to me. I don't want our employees living in some factory for 10 months of the year and then never seeing their kids. And that happens all over the world. You know, if you're an expecting mom that works there, if you have a new baby, there's, you know, you have rights, there's programs to support you. So all the things that we care a lot about, they care about. And so, but then we also push some of the factories to do more. One of our factories in China, which is also one of the best factories on the planet, the way that they treat their employees. We had an idea of building a garden there. So we actually, with the factory, we built this garden where their employees can actually go use the vegetables from this garden to go bring back, you know, healthy foods for their families. And so, you know, we're always kind of pushing them to do a little bit more. And, you know, we found some amazing places. And it's, you know, the thing that's not really surprising is that when you treat employees better, and when they love working for you, and they love the product that you're making, they do a better job. And, you know, we find that, you know, we have what we call a human lifespan warranty with all of our products. So it's 61 years. The reason it's 61 is a kind of random number, but it's actually tied to the average lifespan of someone in the underdeveloped world. So if you live in the developed world, you live almost 20 years longer than someone in the underdeveloped world, which is just not okay. Like, we need to do something about that. And so, you know, we're able to offer this amazing warranty to the product because it's just made so well, because the people that are making it care about what we're making. Yeah, great question. What other questions? Yes?
Is it all online, or do you have retail stores, locations?
Yeah, so we mostly online. It's like 90+% of our sales. We actually do have one store in Salt Lake City that's attached to our office. We're in a really cool, we're right in downtown Salt Lake. We're in this really cool historic building. It was Salt Lake City's first skyscraper. It's 7 stories, but in the 1800s they called it a skyscraper. We're in that building. We have our offices in several floors where we design and develop all the product, where we do, you know, marketing, and where we have our impact team and do all that work. And then on the ground floor, right on Main Street, is a store. We're also opening up a second store in the Fashion Place Mall in Salt Lake this summer. And then this fall, we're opening up a store either in San Francisco or Seattle. We're kind of making that decision right now. So we will have more and more stores around the U.S. We also do sell the product now through REI and Nordstrom. We said no to a lot of retailers like Urban Outfitters and Macy's and other big retailers that have wanted to buy the product. And we're just really careful about who we sell to and making sure that they can actually tell the story of the brand, what it represents. This isn't for us about just selling as much stuff as possible. It's about building the brand in the right way. So that's a great question. Other questions? Yes?
You mentioned you went from 65 ideas down to 4.
Yeah.
What advice would you give in selecting which business idea to pursue and what items are most important?
Yeah, so how do you select the best business idea? You know, this is one of the biggest mistakes I see entrepreneurs make, is they just run with the first or second idea because they get so excited about doing something on their own. The reality is that you need to be very disciplined about the ideation process. If you're going to spend the next 5 to 7 years of your life or longer and all of your savings, and maybe your parents' savings, you know, my very first business, I got my parents and my in-laws to mortgage their homes to go build that business. It was really stressful. Make sure that you're spending that time on the right idea. And so come up with as many ideas as possible. Come up with 50 or 100 ideas at a minimum. And then go take those ideas and slowly cut them down. And then you can set your filters the way that you want. You know, for every person it's going to be different. Because we'd already built and sold a business before, we wanted to do something really big. We wanted to do something that could do like $100 million in revenue in 5 years or something like that. So that was one of the filters. For your first business, it might be, hey, one of my filters is going to be, I need this business to be profitable within the first, 6 months or 3 months. Maybe the scale of it doesn't matter as much as just being able to get profitability and being able to build something that's differentiated. So you can go create your own filters, but I think just running that process is really critical. There's a book that was written by a couple of my Wharton professors called Innovation Tournaments, and it's a great book that kind of runs you through this process if that's something that interests. So, great question. Yes?
What have been some of your most effective ad campaigns online?
Some of our most effective ad campaigns. We've done a few that have been really fun. I think all these product stories that are really rich, those always do really well.
And do you do those on like YouTube and Facebook?
Yeah, yeah, we do them on Facebook.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Questable video does well. We also use, are you guys familiar with crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter and Indiegogo?
Yeah.
So we done a few there. We did a bag a few months ago that's our ultimate travel bag. It's the ultimate adventure travel bag. It is a killer bag. I've been to over 70 countries. I love traveling. This bag replaces every bag I've ever traveled with. It is amazing. And so it did 1.3 million, or 1.4, maybe 1.4 million in sales on this crowdfunding platform in like 30 or 45 days. So that one was a really successful one as well. We did the llama sweater on Kickstarter. We had a 61-day challenge where we had some of our ambassadors go wear the sweater for 61 days straight. The llama wool does not retain odor. These guys were climbing mountains all over the world. One of them went to Antarctica, and they wore the sweaters like day and night, 61 straight days, and it still didn't smell. It still smelled like llama. It's just this amazing, it's this great story, so that did really well for us. So it's about telling really rich stories, about doing something different. Those tend to do well. Yeah. Maybe one more question, and then I'll stick around for a few minutes if we have time to talk to people individually. Yeah?
Your whole mission is about being good and everything, it's like really commendable. Have you ever thought about revisiting where you felt like you were brought and recreating children projects from others?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I got the whole question. So
do you ever plan on going back and recreate, like in Brazil, was that where the business was? Recreating baby products and everything?
Yeah, so my last business is in Brazil, and it's still there, so it's still running. Honestly, I can't imagine doing anything different. I love building this brand. It's this outdoor brand. I love the mission that we're working on. As we grow, I do look at how can we go back to some of these countries that I've lived in. Cotopaxi is named after a volcano in Ecuador where I grew up. I want to do more work there. Brazil, I'd love to try to do something there. So yeah, there is certainly some draw to some of these other places that I've been. I'm not sure if that's exactly answering your question.
I was just wondering if because you do such good with this company, I was wondering if you wanted to
go and try to do something similar with another business. Okay, I see what you're saying. I don't think so. I mean, it's so hard as an entrepreneur. I don't know if anyone here has like ADD. I totally have ADD. So entrepreneurs tend to have ADD. You're like bouncing all over the place. You have great ideas all the time, and you have to build a great team around you that can really help execute on your ideas. And the tendency for me is to jump into a lot of different things. And I've gotten better over the years of just saying, you know what, if I really want to have the impact that I want to have, I should really focus. And so I've tried really hard with this business to just say, you know what, this is what I'm passionate about. I wake up every day and I love what I'm doing. One of my favorite quotes is actually by a man named Dieter Uchtdorf, and he says, the desire to create is one of the deepest journeys of the human soul. This is true. Inside of us, we all have this desire to build something, to create something. And I love being an entrepreneur because of that. It satisfies that thing that I have. And for some people it might be business, for others it might be creating art or music or cooking. But everyone here, I know you've all felt that before, when you've crafted a great essay or when you built something on your own, it feels good. And so that's what I love about being an entrepreneur. So I hope each of you can discover whatever it is that drives you, that fulfills that need to create something. So, well, thank you. I'll stick around for a few minutes and answer questions.